Bill 7, Economic Stabilization Tariff Act. What does that mean? Well, we're going to dive into that next, so stay tuned and buckle up. Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to PWD Allies podcast. My name is Brent Frayne. I'm the host. Today, we're going to be talking about the Economic Stabilization, it's a long word, Tariff Response Act in BC. And the government wants to pass that just through flying colors, not even through the legislature. Just ram it through. What does that all mean? That's a long word. Say that again. Economic Stabilization Tariff Response Act. That's a Bill 7. Wow, that's say that a few good times. And
Yeah.
I kind of wonder how come that really has to be. That's the Premier of British Columbia in Canada, but no other Premier, from what I know, is actually imposing that in. And the reason why the Premier wants to put that in is just in case the President of the United States wants to throw a whole bunch of tariffs, unknown amounts, then they're prepared apparently for it. They don't have to debate on it in the legislature in British Columbia. They can just go and use the Measures Act, and they can just go ahead and sign it like an executive order and just boom, just throw it right back. It's like throwing like a handball. Here you go, your turn, catch, your turn. And who's the piggy? Who's the piggy in the middle, though? It's like
Yeah, well, this is just it, Brent. We actually weren't quite sure what we were going to do today, like what we were going to
yeah,
do as a topic, but this is very this is very current events stuff that's going on in BC here, and
yeah,
it's really kind of, for me it just screams of abuse of power and political overreach, like so much. Because you and I both watched that podcast, Political Capital,
yes,
with Rob Shaw. It's on Czech News TV or Czech TV, um, and it's really good. And basically, what Rob Shaw said is, why does the government really need to do this?
yeah,
Why does it need to circumvent the legislature?
mm-hmm,
And I just wanted to bring up before we get too far along, I wanted to bring up a screen share as well from another legislative reporter. This one is from Vaughn Palmer,
mm-hmm.
and he posts here in the Vancouver Sun. It's a really good article as well, and I was just gonna quickly highlight a little bit of that. Um, so it's Von Palmer says in the headline here, it's BC Premier David Eby defends emergency legislation, but appears he's uncertain of its details. And
Yeah,
and and I mean we'll get into that, but
yeah,
it really is puzzling that
yeah,
here he is, he put together this legislation, he cobbled it together. He doesn't even know what's in it.
the details.
He
What
does
are
he
the details? The
like
devil's
our
details.
own premier doesn't even know what's in it, and he's the one that
Wow,
created it. It was his idea, and he doesn't even know what's in it. You know,
wow.
and so
Hmm,
again, Von Palmer saying that,
hmm,
the NDP didn't need to wield the legislative hammer unless EB was planning to do an early election, and we'll get into that too.
mm-hmm,
Um, but here, let's see. I was just gonna quickly scroll
hmm,
down here. The tariff response bill, like you said, Bill 7.
mm-hmm.
And actually, what it might be better, uh, rather than scrolling down on the article, it might be better if I just refer to my notes,
Hmm.
uh, because I did make some notes based on the article, so I'll maybe do that instead. Um, so you have, and again, so this is an article from March 14th, and it says, that EB entered politics with a reputation as a civil libertarian, and he's the author of How to Sue the Police, and that was from 2008. He helped write this book, and I
Hmm.
tried to find it on in on Amazon, Amazon.com or Amazon.ca. I couldn't find it there, but you can actually find it on Google Books. If you look at Google Books, you can still find it,
Hmm.
and it's got David Eby's name on it. This
Oh,
how to sue the police.
oh,
Um, you know, so and then so Von Palmer's basically says, in response to criticisms of his own heavy-handed legislation, he says in effect, if anyone doesn't like my power grab, sue me. You
oh,
know, yeah, and anyway, so there was a live news conference that David Eby did. I believe it was on the 4th. Oh, actually, it was on the 13th, and he says three times during the that news conference. He says three times that you know whenever the if ever the cabinet wants to make changes or wield an executive order of any kind, it has to be brought forward to the legislature. He said that three
wow.
times in the news conference, and it's just categorically false. He said it three times, and it's false. Um,
Hmm.
Von Palmer said, like, after the news conference, he actually went to the premier's office. He said, "Can you show me somewhere in the legislation where it says that any executive order or from the cabinet has to get passed through the legislature first?" And they said, "We can't find it because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the
Oh,
legislation." You
oh,
know, you know. So
wow.
so here it is, like David Eby, the premier of our province,
Mhm.
he's saying that don't worry, we're going to bring everything in front of the legislature first. Any executive order that we have, we're going to bring in front of the legislature. It's like, I mean, that's just not right because it's not in the legislation. The whole purpose of the legislation is to
Hmm.
circumvent the legislatures. That's the whole problem with it.
Well, I
You
mean,
know,
here's the question I have on that one is if the premier doesn't know the details that's in there, how are all the members of the legislative assembly going to vote on that, pass that bill, if they don't even know the details? If David Eby doesn't know the details, how are they going to know the details?
yeah, no, exactly.
Right?
And that's the other thing they mentioned um, is that the only people that will know all the details is the inner cabinet.
Oh,
The only people that will know the details of anything will be the inner cabinet. The
oh,
rest of the NDP
the
party,
yeah, the caucus, yeah.
the rest of the
They
caucus
won't know.
they'll be completely in the dark, because the
Wow.
only thing that says in the legislation is that any executive order
Hmm.
will be brought to the legislation or sorry, the legislature after
Oh,
it's decided.
wow.
That's what the legislation says in Bill 7, is that they bring it to the legislature after the fact. It's after the fact.
So all the
So
all the members in the caucus,
so
they
all the members in the
oh,
caucus will have no idea.
they have no
No
say
idea.
so on what goes on. Wow. Or they no
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it'd be like a bombshell dropped on their lap saying, well, here you are, look at that. They'll say, well, we didn't vote for this. And
Yeah.
and they didn't vote to represent their constituencies, not knowing of what goes on in a bill. I mean, they should all have a say so. I mean, in my view, I think they should all have a say so in what goes on that bill. I mean, all vote
Yeah.
it. I mean, all the parties all vote on it, and then kind of go from there. Yeah, that's it doesn't seem right to me. And kind of on that same theme, I wonder why all the other premiers then why haven't they all done the same thing then? I mean, why is it just BC?
Well, I mean, it's because other provinces are aware that it's a tremendous overreach to do that, right?
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
spitballing, but I mean, the
Hmm.
whole point of having a legislature is to have checks and balances.
Yeah.
When you have a bill that says, you know what, we don't have to decide anything in front of the legislature,
Hmm. For
like
2 years, apparently. two
for
years.
2 years, it's in
Yeah.
effect. This bill will be in effect until May 28th, 2027. May
Ooh.
28th, 2027 is when it stale dates. So
Oh.
anything that's decided within this bill, any changes, and they can make sweeping changes on any piece of legislation. Basically any piece of legislation they can make sweeping changes at any time, and they
Mhm.
can change whatever they want.
Yeah, because there was one part I was reading up on that, Neil. Is they can dig up personal information too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's they can change a law, they can modify regulation, they can collect personal information, they can bring in fees or penalties, and there's no accountability, no transparency, nothing.
Even property taxes, if they think that the property taxes are too low, they can actually crank it up if they wanted to.
Yeah.
They can change it.
And here's one last thing that I pulled from the article, from the Vancouver Sun article. Uh, here's a or was it? Oh, actually, it wasn't from the Vancouver Sun article. It was actually from the Political Capital.
Hmm.
It was Rob Shaw that basically quoted Eby.
Hmm.
This was a quote that he basically pulled from the news conference. Eby said, this is Eby talking. He says, if the MLAs don't like this, vote against my government, bring me down. We have a slim majority. I'll take this directly to the public in an election and I'll win.
Oh,
So
wow.
should I say that again?
Yeah, yeah.
Should
Say
I,
that again. Yeah.
if the MLAs don't like this, vote against my government, bring me down. We have a slim majority. I'll take this directly to the public in an election and I'll win.
Wow.
And, you know, and so Rob Shaw says, I mean, that smacks of entitlement, he says in that
Yeah.
podcast, right? I mean, it really does.
Yeah.
And so that's one side of it. And the other side of it is
Wow.
the fact that the premier again had no idea what's in his own bill. He has no idea the
Mhm.
level of maybe he does and he was just pretending to be stupid. That
Mhm.
could be too. Like he's just pretending to be dumb so he can pull one over on unsuspecting BCers here. Like he just wants to keep everybody stupid. Maybe he
Eh,
just wants to keep everybody stupid on purpose. He says, don't worry, I know what I'm doing.
mhm, mhm.
I'm the author of how to sue the police.
And then
But
that's
but
probably,
trust me.
and that's probably why when the reporters ask, what are the details in there, I don't know. I mean, clueless, right? And that's what the thumbnail today, everyone, it says clueless.
Yeah,
It's
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that's why I did the thumbnail I did. I mean, it's just so stupid. Like he's completely clueless. I mean, maybe like I said, maybe he's just feigning ignorance on purpose. I don't know, but
I don't
but
know.
but even like the Attorney General Nikki Sharma said something really stupid too. She basically said, because she was standing beside him on that news conference on the 13th, she's standing right beside him, and she was asked like, don't you think this legislation is kind of dangerous? Like that was basically what was coming from the press, right? And her response was, well, we may not use it. We may not use it.
Hmm.
Doesn't that give you just
Yeah,
comforting vibes to know
yeah.
that they may not use it?
It puts you on the edge
They
of your
may
seat
not use
because
it.
you don't really know what they're going to do with that piece of
Oh,
legislation. Uh, that's like saying to seniors, well, you've got a 45-year bus pass, but we can change in the legislation. We can just take that away just like that. Just take it away. And we don't have to have a debate in the legislature for 2 years or up to 2 years if we wanted to. And no other parties can debate on it. We're just going to go and do it. Sign an executive order, done.
yeah.
Imagine that
So
just as an example. I'm not picking on seniors, but
yeah,
just as an example, I mean, they could change things just like that.
yeah. And one of the last comments that's made in the that's made in the Vancouver Sun article by Von Palmer
Hmm.
is that he basically says that either David Eby is ignorant, he's either ignorant or arrogant.
Mm.
Basically,
Wow.
that was his closing comment. He's either ignorant or arrogant, or maybe a combination of both. You
Mm.
know, but yeah, it's pretty bad, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Especially where right now the way the economy is going, um, to me, it almost seems like a complete distraction. That's what one of my neighbors was telling me this morning because we are talking about tariffs, and one of my neighbors, and then another neighbor came in and started chiming in. And of course, as we talked about when we first opened up the podcast today, everyone's talking about tariffs, and yeah, it's the big topic of the day. And one of my neighbors said to me was, "Well, what about the underlying issues that the people are suffering right now economically?" And but
mm,
they changed the channel. It's like, oh, they're all about tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. But the
yeah.
underlying issue is, people their pensions aren't going up or their incomes aren't going up, cost of living's going up. But it's like, oh well, hey, but there's more to do. The one lady, she's so critical, but it doesn't matter who's in government. She said it could be. She said it could be the Purple Party. She says, I don't care. Yeah. I said, so I started laughing. I said, Purple Party? She goes, well, yeah, because it's the policy. And again, a policy now that that really plays into like today's topic of the tariff. Like things can be changed just like that.
Hmm.
And so basically my neighbor's point was, I told her I'm going to be doing the podcast today, and so she asked me to carry her comment or question forward was, so are you going to change the underlying issue of people's pensions? She's a senior. She's 78 years old. She has no other income. She just has her GIS or OAS and her CPP. And her CPP, again, it gets clawed off her. It
Yeah.
gets clawed off her. I
Yeah.
mean, she paid in for, she says, 46 years. 46 years. And
Well,
she said it all clawed off her.
yeah, and I'm glad you went there, Brent, because again, I mean, I think everybody knows that I'm not a fan of EB, right? I mean, I don't hide the fact, but I mean, my my dislike of EB stems back a bit, and it's warranted because uh, again, my clawback issue started when my first wife passed away in 2013. It was August 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I found out that the provincial government here claws back survivors' pensions, things like survivors' pensions as unearned income.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, again, everybody knows how a pension is supposed to work. A pension is supposed to be a sheltered income.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be a sheltered income. That's the whole point of it. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
not going to call a pension, if you might as well just call it income. If you're just going to say,
Yeah.
well, it's not anything important. But the whole point of a pension is it's a sheltered, protected income. It's a sheltered, protected thing. And so for the government to say, the provincial government to say, we're gonna take a sheltered, protected income and we're gonna claw that back. And
Mm-hmm.
again, the reason why I'm critical of David Eby is, and you can say, well, maybe I'm being unfair, but it just so happens to be the truth, is that again, my situation happened in 2013,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't actually start writing directly to the Attorney General until David Eby took the mantle
Mm-hmm.
or took the job basically when the NDP rose to power in 2017, right?
Right.
Because I mean previously I was just writing emails to the BC social development ministry, and I thought, well, what's the point of writing to the I had that kind of opinion at that point. I was like, what's the point of even writing to the attorney general? Because
Mm-hmm.
everybody kind of knew that the BC Liberals were out of touch at that time. So I was just kind of just focusing on the ministry only,
Mm-hmm.
and it was only when the BC NDP rose to power, I thought, well, maybe it'll be different. Maybe it'll be different, and we'll have new people in power, and this David Eby seems like a good guy. Like he's slayed the dragon that was Christy Clark. So maybe this is a good guy. So
Mm,
I started to copy all these emails to him
mhm.
because again, for people that don't know, the attorney general, the job of the attorney general is to basically uphold the principles of righteousness and justice within the framework of of the um of the government. Like it's basically almost acts as a watchdog, um
Yeah, pretty much.
almost acts as a watchdog in a sense, right?
Mhm,
So that's why I thought this is great. I'm gonna copy all this crap that's going on with the clawback to David Eby
mhm,
and ask him like could you know why is legislation able to pervert the truth of what a pension is,
mhm.
where you can basically turn a pension into monopoly money? That's basically what it is, right? You're basically
Yeah.
turning a pension into monopoly money. Like it doesn't count. It's a mean nothing money now. We can just ignore it.
That's why I got a pink unicorn right behind me because
Yeah,
it's just poof, it's just
you
magic.
know, the idea that the government can say, well, we'll give exemptions. We'll give up to $15,000. Like
Mm,
here in BC, they have up to $15,000 of income exemption.
mhm.
Uh, if say I worked at McDonald's or somewhere, right? If I worked at McDonald's for 40 hours a week, I or whatever it is, I could get that $15,000 of income exemption. But as soon as you say here is a protected pension, here is a sheltered and protected pension,
Mhm.
or what should be a sheltered and protected pension,
Yeah.
we're just going to ignore that, turn it into monopoly money. So anyway, I would write this to David Eby,
Mhm.
and he was the attorney general for 5 or 6 years. I didn't hear a peep from him. I didn't hear one word from him in five
Wow.
or 6 years, and I wrote him like at least 30 emails, at least 30 emails. And you're gonna tell me that he didn't have enough aides? He doesn't have enough aides as an attorney general, which is a very like one of the most high profile jobs in all of in all of government, one of the most high profile, high powered jobs in all of government. You're going to tell me he has not enough aides to even answer like one of the 30 emails?
Mhm.
He's just going to mute me like entirely?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for our viewers and listeners, the CPP, what Neil's referring to is that was paid into. Like, so when a person had employment, right? The government says, "Oh yeah, no problem. You can earn X amount of dollars." Now that CPP, that money was paid into, so
Yeah.
now it's a survivor's pension. So it should
Yeah.
be the same as the employment income. Like it should be classified as the same thing, but the government basically turn it around saying, "Oh no, it's not employment; it's a CPP. We can claw it off you."
It becomes monopoly money, right? And
Yeah.
and the thing is that my first wife that's now passed away,
Mm-hmm.
she worked as a school teacher. She was an elementary school teacher for 16 years.
Yeah.
So she paid into that pension for 16 years. She paid into it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the reason why you have a pension is it functions as a rainy day thing. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
when something sucks, or when you really need to draw on something, if something really bad happens, that's what a pension is for.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a pension is for. And yet our provincial government here in BC says, if something really bad happens, if something sucks, we're just going to turn all pensions into monopoly money. They don't count. They're not a sheltered thing. Pensions aren't a sheltered thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have to work a second time. Get your dead wife, Neil. Get your dead wife to work another 20 years. Get your dead wife to work another 20 years, and maybe we'll honor that.
Yeah, and then we won't claw that off you.
We
Uh,
won't call we won't call, so bring her back from the dead. Bring her back from the dead. Have her work another 16 years. Have her work another 16 years, and maybe we won't claw that back. Maybe we won't claw that back.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just disgusting. It's disgusting
Yeah.
what they do. It's just disgusting.
It is
And
totally disgusting, and and to my neighbor, if you did subscribe to the channel, which she said she was going to, I told her where to go, to where to go, where to go to subscribe. Regarding your CPP clawback, yeah, you might want to look into that and talk to the BC government or the federal also, and find out the reason why. But as what Neil talks about all the time, and rightfully so. I mean, clawbacks. Like I haven't heard about that for seniors, like that kind of clawback. Only thing that I can reference to is what my mom had gone through, where she had money off of her pension. I mean, God rest her soul, but she had money off her pension, so she went grocery shopping, right, at a local co-op. And co-op, at people that are in British Columbia, you know about how co-op is. I mean, you have a membership. I mean, I used to have a membership at the co-op too. I mean, probably it's dormant now. I haven't shopped there in decades. The number is still embedded in my mind. I know what it is, but anyway, long story short is, so she would go shopping at the co-op, and she would buy pet food for her pet family that she had, her hobby farm. And I mean, wow, chickens, ducks, I mean, birds, I mean, fish, cats, dogs, bunny rabbits, potbelly pig, yeah, you name it. She had them all in her yard. But it was her family, right? And so then she'd do grocery shopping, but she would get rewarded. She would get rewarded once a year and saying, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your generosity. Here's a dividend check for you, right? Thank you. Please shop again. And so she would buy case lot sales, and get the most bang for the buck. And that was, I mean, decades ago, where, yeah, I mean, you could get more value for your dollar. As we all know, the dollar has degraded itself. It's eroded over time. I mean, you get less value for your dollar now. But so even then, my mom grew up in the dirty 30s, they call it. And she grew up when she was a little girl, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. Through the Great Depression, her mother did, and so she was just a little toddler at the time, so she knew. But she grew up, and then as she grew up, then they went into the World War II. So it was a rude awakening for her, but she understood the value of a dollar. She really knew how to stretch that dollar. I mean, there was many times where, I mean, if I didn't eat what was on my plate at the table, I would have to go to my room and with no dinner. There was times that I had to do that, and wasn't so good, tummy grumbling, but um, I guess I didn't understand of what my mom had gone through, and then she explained to me when I was a little child when I had gone through that, and I became to realize and appreciate a lot more value for the dollar, and realize that my mom really worked hard at trying to put what was on the table the best way she could. And so, long story short, is that the government went along and they actually took that money off her. Like, so she get this dividend check, and she had made plans, and she went to go to Europe on a vacation to visit her relatives, her extended family. I mean, she grew up in England, and when she was a little girl. So she told me all the stories about how things were, the economy was, and how things are now versus then. And she had gone on a beautiful trip, and she had saved up for it too. Amazing enough, even out of her money, she was able to save up for it. If she needed things, she would actually go to her neighbors. Like, our neighbors didn't even, like, they would just offer. They didn't even say, well, she would just say, times are tough, and they say, oh, sure, come on over for dinner. Like, they'd go and make dinner, didn't say, oh, I want it repaid, or oh, how dare you ask us for help, or anything like that. Like, it was just a different way of life. I remember many times going over to neighbors, and oh wow, okay. And one of the neighbors said to me, well, Brent, we've got these little sparkling water, would you like this? And I'm looking at this, and my mom goes, oh, no, 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 Brent doesn't need that. She said sparkling water. Well, it wasn't sparkling water. It had a little bit of liquor in there. My mom goes, oh, no, 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 not
Oh.
at his age. I'm
Okay.
looking at this. I'm like, oh, sparkling water. But she kind of grinned, and I was like, oh. My mom goes, no, no. So my mom goes, how about some ginger beer though? ginger beer. My mom loved her ginger beer. So we'd have,
I like it too. I like it
I
too.
had some of that. I'm like, ooh, it was pretty harsh. But
Yeah.
anyway, they garnished all that off her. She went away and she got back, and there was, and her, she had got a notification by the government saying that her pension was on hold. She didn't know what was going on. So she contacted them. They said, yeah, so you didn't get a pension this month because, and you actually owe us. So what's going to happen is that it's going to come off your next pension
Mhm.
for, it was like a bunch of months in a row. So she was
Mhm.
short income
Yeah.
because she got a dividend check by a grocery store that she
Mhm.
got her money, and she shopped at the grocery store, and the store said, here's a portion back for 1 year. And
Mhm.
so she got punished for shopping at her grocery store. And so she got punished in a sense to go away. I mean, well, she didn't get punished to go away, but she got punished in a sense economically.
Mhm.
So I had to go and pick up another full-time job on top of my other full-time job that I was doing. So
Mhm.
I was working two full-time jobs. I was getting maybe 4.5 hours, 5 hours sleep a night, just so I
Mhm.
could make more money before I was even on disability. I was
Mhm.
already having obstacles in my life. I didn't understand what, because I wasn't diagnosed to different things, right? But
Mhm.
visual impairment. So there's things on the job that I couldn't do, but I just kept pushing myself more and more and more. And I kept giving my mom more money, like here. So I had to help my mom out because the government took it off her. So they punished my mom, and they actually ended up punishing it, actually, in a sense, punished me because I had to
Mhm.
work my butt even more to help
Yeah.
her out, where the government could have just done the right freaking thing at the time.
Yeah.
And what happened was over time, it really it affected my mom's health. I started kind of going down a little bit more, and it's just the government policies really. So I guess the moral of the story is, I mean, government, like, you did wrong, right? You really and realize that you did wrong back then. You need to go forward and change things. Now with this bill 7, is that going to, yeah, I mean, you could change policies, right? I mean, maybe use that to your advantage. Change policies like senior pension.
Change the policies and get rid of all clawbacks.
Get rid
That
of
then
clawbacks.
then I'll say it's a great idea.
Yeah, like right now,
Bill 7's a great
you
idea.
could change all the clawbacks. You could change seniors' pensions. You could change PWD's income. Like, you haven't increased it. And I
Yeah.
wasn't even going to go there with this on this podcast because
Yeah.
we'll be talking about this with one of
Hmm.
our guests coming up. But I'll give
Yeah.
a quick overview just for our listeners. So the government in BC says they've raised the rates five times since 2017, since they formed government with a green confidence and supply agreement with the Greens back in 2017. So when the government formed power, um, they initiated $100 increase immediately. Okay, so great. I mean, that's great on them.
Hmm.
Why did they do that? Because John Horgan at the time, who was our premier, was really disgusted. He said that the former Liberal government hadn't raised the rates in many years. They just ignored it.
Hmm.
Cost of living was going up then, and I know a lived experience. So that was great on John to do that. He didn't want us to wait till 2018 budget to get that. So as in the economic statement, fall economic statement, they had already made that plan, that $100 increase. So in 2018 came, so that's one increase. And keep
Hmm.
a tally there, Neil.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so 2017, so 2018, as we all know, in British Columbia, PWD, we used to have what seniors have now. Still, it wasn't taken away. Was a
Hmm.
$45 a year bus pass, and all you
Hmm.
had to pay was $45 for an administration fee, and you got a yearly bus pass, no
Yeah.
questions asked. If you
Yeah.
didn't use the bus pass, you didn't have to. It was there if you needed it. The
Yeah.
government,
Well, if you didn't think you wanted it, then you didn't even have to pay for the
you
45
didn't have
bucks
to
if you don't
pay
want it.
for it. Yeah, you didn't
Yeah.
have to pay $45,
Yeah.
but it was there.
Hmm.
But the Liberal Party played a little game with the NDP back before the NDP formed government, took away the bus pass and changed it to $52. Have an option of having a bus pass,
Monthly,
yeah,
monthly.
monthly, and then having an option of having $52 on your monthly check to go buy groceries, pay for a taxi, whatever you want to use it for. I don't know,
Hmm.
go buy pizza, but you can't get around them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so fast forward is, so in 2018, the government said, "Oh well, that was a rate increase." Well, no, it wasn't. I mean, that you're playing with transportation here. So
Yeah.
okay, so 2019, okay, so that's two. So
Yeah.
in 2019, $50 increase. Okay, so
Yeah.
that was actually in the budget. That was actually in the BC budget.
Yeah. So that
So,
was
so
really
technically,
that was really only the second one
yeah,
there
yeah,
right
so
then.
technically, yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
technically, okay. So now in 2020, there was nothing, but COVID supplement got introduced in
Hmm.
2020 for people in BC for PWD and income assistance. I can't
Yeah.
ignore that.
Hmm.
Um, so they got $300, and so in 2020. Now that wasn't actually in the budget. So if people are watching the budget, there was actually nothing in the BC budget at that
Yeah.
time, but it was actually just introduced as a pilot project to see how that would change a person's life going forward.
Yeah.
How would it better their
It
life?
was temporary. It was
It was
temporary.
temporary, and that
Yeah.
was what it was meant to be as a temporary measure. But
Hmm.
the government realized, the minister in charge at the time realized that it was actually making a huge positive impact on
Hmm.
people's life. They could live somewhere else, maybe get a better place. Maybe their environment where they were living wasn't so good. So they
Imagine,
were
imagine that, Brent.
imagine
More money actually helps people.
more money helps people. They can make a better
Wow.
they can make a better choice. Yeah, they could move into a
Wow.
better place. They could buy healthy food. I know because the news hour asked myself and Sonia at the time, asked, well, how would this change if the government was to introduce a $300 supplement? How would that change your life right now? And they asked both of us the same question, but in different maybe wording. I said, well, I mean, I buy healthy food. I maybe rent another nice place, and ask Sonia the same thing. Like she said, I can make better choices for diabetes. Like I can buy different healthy foods to help maintain my diabetes. I think that was what you said, and live in a better place. And we did. We moved into another place at the
Mhm.
time. So in 2021, right before between 2020 and 2021, the government at the time said, okay, the pilot project, we're going to have to start kind of toning it down now. We're going to phase it out.
Mhm.
But what we didn't know, well, we did, but we were told we couldn't say anything. In 2021, the government decided to keep on $175 to the PWD. So now the
Mhm.
government says that's a rate increase. So that's three.
Mhm.
Okay. So the $125 was clawed off. Okay. They took
Yeah.
that, clawed it off.
Yeah.
Well, we were renting a place at the time, and our corporate manager had said, I rented to you guys based on that the $300 was there. I go, well, yeah, because we were told that it was going to be there. And who told you that? And I said, well, from the ministry's office. Can I
Mhm.
see a copy of that? Oh boy. So I showed it to her. She goes, yeah, that's the same copy that you showed me when you were wanting to rent here. And so,
Mhm.
and that's what the ministry's office said, everyone. This
Mhm.
is the amount, Brent, going forward. This is the amount that you're going to be getting going forward. The government's not going to be clawing off. You're going to be keeping the $300. They're not going to take it away. Okay, so I can go and rent that place. Yeah, knock yourself out. I mean, get a nice place. I mean, why not? I said, there was a nice place versus another place that we were going to rent from. And I said, if that was you, what would you do? I would go for the nice place. I mean, why not, right? I mean, you're going to have this $300 now, and the government's not going to take it away. I mean, that would be cruel, she said, for the government to take that away. And this came from the ministry's office. That would be cruel for them to take it away. They're not going to take it away, Brent. I mean, it was supposed to be a temporary measure, she said, but the government realizes that it's making a better outcome for people with disabilities and income assistance. So they're going to keep it in place. Okay, great. So I made that decision based at the time. So that was three increases. So now in 2022, no increase, $0 in the BC budget. In
Mhm.
2023, wow, that $125 came back. But but it only came back to some PWD.
Some. Yeah.
And if you had claimed that your rent had gone up in market rent, not in subsidized housing, because they didn't get that 125. So in market housing, if you claimed that your rent had gone up, now if you're a corporate landlord or your manager, wherever you're renting from, had given you a rent increase, then yes, you were entitled to get that 125. If you rented from a basement suite or maybe a condominium, somebody's renting out their condominium to you, or any kind of housing, and they did not raise your rent at that time, you did not get that 125. So it only went to X amount of people. I don't know how many it went to, but it didn't go to all PWD like the government claimed. So
Yeah.
now you add up all those rate increases, that's five times. That's
Mhm.
five times.
Mhm.
But in a sense, what was actually in the BC budget was in 2017, and 2019.
Yeah.
Twice,
Yeah.
not five.
Yeah.
And then so now in budget 2024 and budget 2025, $0 increase in the BC budget for PWD and income assistance in BC. Cost of living skyrocket up, rent increases, and then people have been splashing at the government, and they've been defending it, saying, "Well, we raised the rates 5 times, and people can apply for all different subsidies that are available." I'm sorry, I can't get those subsidies. I don't qualify.
Yeah. I would love to get a rent subsidy, but I don't qualify either.
Yeah, I mean, all these other
Yeah.
supplemental subsidies that they have in,
Yeah.
like you can get for your nutritional supplement, you can get vitamin supplements, you can get a whole bunch of them, but you have to have all these medical conditions in order to get all that stuff. It's
Mhm.
like the CDB, getting that DTC. You gotta meet all the requirements. I read the new revised DTC. Oh my God, Neil.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah. And like
Yeah.
that is crazy. That's the same thing like BC government. They had in their platform in when they just got elected that they're relying on the CDB. Now we know that majority of people they're not going to get that CDB. Very, very few are going to get that because they have to go through all the hurdles to get
Yeah.
that. And so people in BC, some may get it, some may not get that the CDB. And so again, there'll be no increase on that either. So the government get no increase in the BC budget. They're relying on
Mhm.
the federal one. So guess what? It's like they're all left
Yeah.
out in the dark.
Yeah.
So I guess with this Bill 7, maybe I don't know. Maybe they can use that to their advantage of changing things. I don't know. Maybe that could
Well,
be a
if they did use it for that,
imagine. Then I'd
I
be
would
like,
I would
hey,
be on board like
I'd be like,
100%.
hey,
But like unfortunately, we all know how government works. We all know how power hungry governments can be,
yeah,
and unfortunately, David Eby has always struck me as a very power hungry person, very ego driven. You know, and and again, I guess that's why I'm harder on him. And again, I realize it is unfair a little bit because I only started to pick on the Attorney General when when David Eby became Attorney General in 2017. So really, my first 4 years of being being a widower, I didn't write any emails to the Attorney General. He was the first one that I did that
mhm.
to. So maybe that's unfair of me, but
Well,
at the same time, that is his role. That is his role
yeah,
to protect the what do you want to call it? The authenticity of proper government function. And to have somebody like him, a lawyer, basically say, you know what? I don't care about truth. I don't care about truth of a pension. Don't tell me that a pension should be a protected thing. Don't tell me that a pension should be a sheltered thing. Don't tell me that turning a pension into monopoly money is a bad thing. Don't tell me that I need to protect justice and I need to protect righteousness. Don't tell me that as a lawyer. Don't tell me that as a lawyer that righteousness and justice are important.
mhm,
I mean, you
mhm.
really you realize how stupid that sounds, Brent?
Oh,
It sounds so stupid and ridiculous to have a lawyer running our province as a premier, a lawyer
mhm.
basically like double fisting and like raising a middle finger to justice and righteousness and saying it doesn't matter. Truth and justice and righteousness doesn't matter. I'm a lawyer and I could care less about truth. I could care less about righteousness. I could care less about justice.
Mhm.
Because clawing back pensions from widowers and widows and widowers, that's justice to me. That's justice, right?
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's just stupid, so stupid.
Well, yeah, and that's why I get so ticked off when government makes all these excuses of, oh, well, there's more to do, or when the fiscal situation allows, the reasons economic downturn, not reasons to raise PWD rates. I mean, it's disgusting that in society that how governments think that it's okay. It's perfectly okay. I mean, to treat people with disabilities in inhumane rates.
It
I mean,
is
yeah,
inhumane,
I
yeah.
mean, I mean, is it is like our fault that we're born the way we are, or we develop more disabilities in life as we get older? We get more disabilities. It's not our fault. I mean, Like it's
apparently it is, Brent.
well,
Apparently
yeah,
it
according
is.
to the government, they think it's okay. And, I always kind of look back at one minister who was in the Liberal Party at the time. And I gave a speech in front of the BC legislature. And it was a very compelling speech. I teared up a little bit, but, because I was very passionate, and I didn't have any notes in front of me. I just, top of my head, and just winged it. And I was trying to keep all factual information right intact. And it was the amount of people, anyway, the amount of people that were actually in the actual audience was forming bigger and bigger and bigger. And one of the gentlemen that was actually in there was actually a MLA at the time, and Dan Davies. He walked up to me and he gave me a hug. He walked up there and he says, "Thank you, thank you," and he says, "Thank you, but I'm sorry." I'm like, huh? I'm sorry. What, you're sorry for hearing my speech? No, you gave a very, very powerful and very effective speech. That's almost like how the MLAs talk in the House. And I said, well, I was very vocal, and I don't want to step on toes, but I only state the facts. And he says, yes, and you did state the facts, and I appreciate what you said. He says, why I'm saying I'm sorry is that I wasn't part of the Liberal brand at the time. I wasn't part of the clan, and I'm sorry that they hurt you, and it's terrible. He says they actually are going to learn from their lessons. Even the finance minister at the time, he said, was reprimanded for not increasing the rates. I said, I didn't know that. And he goes, right. So you didn't know that, and you wouldn't know that, because the public don't get to hear all this stuff. When outside of the chambers, you guys don't hear all the discussions that go on. And as time went on, I mean, I'm not going to say who, but there are discussions that go on that they're given a NDA, right? And they can't talk about a lot of things, and that kind of blinds
Which is a non-disclosure agreement, we have to say. Yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of that kind of goes on with when stuff goes on in caucus, when you got our cabinet, and then you got the caucus who don't get a chance of actually voicing their opinion. I learned a lot of that actually through John Horgan, everyone. John taught me a lot, because I was under an executive at the time. So he knew that I knew a lot of stuff, how different voting things went on. And I mean, I don't know as much as an MLA. I don't know everything that goes on, but he taught me to stand up for myself, to stand up for what I believe in. He says, never stop advocating, Brent. I mean, there are going to be people that are going to want to shut you down and tell you, be quiet. You're advocating too much, he said. Oh, you're advocating too much, Brent. People are going to silence you out if you keep pushing that narrative. And he says, don't silence yourself out. You stand up for what you believe in, as long as you don't start swearing and cursing and calling them, doing the F-bomb and telling them to, I go, well, he said, then you're going to lose disrespect, right? No party's perfect. He even admitted to me, no party is perfect. And I knew that there was something going on at that time. And I said, what do you mean no party's perfect? And he said, and I'll use a couple of quotes here, everyone. He says, no party's perfect because we learn from our mistakes. And when we learn from our mistakes, we're supposed to do better. We're supposed to listen to our constituents, right? In our constituency office, people in the community, we learn from them. We take that information forward. We compile that data. We then put that data out there and we say, hey, how can we do better? Lived experience stories. Yeah, and that was before I started the podcast doing this stuff. He says, but your advocacy is lived experience, Brent. You're advocating for yourself. You advocate for other people because you want to make life better for people. And I said, yeah, I try, but every time I turn around, John, the government, he said, no offense, but the government, they don't want to raise the rates. Why? Well, he says, it depends on how many people are at the table that actually have a voice. And carrying that fast forward all the way to 2020, when John Horgan, actually, that was in 2020. John Horgan was in Langley. He was at Douglas Park. They were looking at bringing in the SkyTrain announcement, and he was there for an announcement. And he told me at the time too that he was only one voice at the table. one voice at the table. And I said, what do you mean one voice? Brent, you know this because you were under the executive, you know the one voice, right? You could say that you want to make changes on something to do with coffee. You wanted to change how they do their coffee, how they distribute coffee for meetings. I go, yeah, I was successful in changing it. It took a lot of work, but I was able to do it. Right. And he says, so imagine one person, myself, John Horgan, your friend here. Okay. I'm at the table. I got one voice. I go, yeah. What? So everybody else at the table didn't want to make changes? I will keep advocating. And he changed the tune. He goes, I will keep advocating going forward to making sure this $300 is going to be set in place and increasing your rates up to no less than, and as Jeff Leggett would say, no less than poverty level. It's amazing, Jeff, if you're watching this or you're going to be watching this, isn't that amazing that John Horgan said no less than poverty level? It was almost like he knew, fast forward in like a time machine going forward, like he's a smart cookie. And I said, well, why won't they do it now? Because there's more work to do, he said. There has to be done. But he said there needs to be more than one voice at the table that needs to listen. And I think that time John knew that his time was up as premier, because he had told me in different private conversations that sometimes when people get into office, they think that it's going to be just perfect. It's going to be awesome. And he says, I liked my job. He said, don't get me wrong. I loved my job. But there was parts of it that he became very frustrated with. But it's all part of the work. He said, I'd get home and Ellie'd say, well, John, how was your day? He'd throw his hand up. He says, and he says, like the F-bomb, right? And he dropped it. He says, I used that a few times. And John, but he was frustrated, right? Because he wanted to make changes to try to make people's lives better. And I guess a message to you, David Eby, John, you were underneath him, and John really wanted to make changes, positive changes, more positive changes for the province. He had a passion, as we all know. He loved people. He said to me, I can't make everybody happy, Brent. I can't even make you happy 100%, because then I guess we'd have a perfect world now, wouldn't we? If everybody was happy, I mean, we could try to at least bring things up to a standard level. And then of course, then we can work from that point on and build from that point on. But if we keep people down, we're not going to make everybody happy. We're going to make people miserable. And so I guess my point is that going forward is we can actually work together as a positive province and as a country and bring things up to a standard level of, so that people are not suffering in legislative poverty. People are not suffering having to figure out where their next meal is going to come from. Are they going to be able to pay rent? Are they going to be able to have transportation to get to and from a community? There's so many changes, and that's what John wanted to do too. John wanted to basically start bringing in transportation, all BC Transit. He wanted to kind of bring things back under an umbrella to make things better.
Well, let's bring it back to the beginning again.
Yeah.
Right to the beginning of the podcast again, because you said something important. You said something about being the only voice at the table, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And well, let's bring this back to Bill 7 again.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why Bill 7 is a bad thing is because it's removing more voices at the table. It's saying, you know what, we don't need to bring it in front of BC legislature. We can just ram things through as a small cabinet, and we'll bring it to the legislature after the fact, after we've done the executive order. And so you're removing guardrails, you're removing oversight, and you're saying, you know what, that doesn't matter, and it matters a lot. You're undermining democracy as soon as you start to say it doesn't, that certain voices don't matter. You're starting to undermine democracy at that point.
Well, and that's what John's point was, is that you need more voices at the table, not less. And I said, well, then why are people not speaking up to make positive changes? Why, Brent? He says, because it doesn't affect their lives. It doesn't affect their lives. And I said, well, my life is my life. I mean, it's not my fault that I'm who I am. I'm disabled. I said sometimes, I said to John, I said on a personal level, I said, sometimes I wish I wasn't born with my disability, but I am born the way I am. And I said, but people accept me for who I am. He goes, that's right, they do. they do accept you. He goes, because right now, if I didn't accept you for who you are, you and I would not be talking. I go, this
Mhm.
is true, very true. He goes, right? You have uh, an attribute in you that shines very great and shines out very strong. And people, they draw to that. They see that. You have that inner strength. I could see things changing for you in a good way going forward. You probably don't see that in yourself, but I do see opportunity for you, whatever that may be, whatever you explore. And this is where I am now, right?
Mhm.
You know, I know I reached out to you, Neil, and I said, well, let's get this channel, let's get this thing going. And the
Mhm.
first year, everybody, I mean, yeah, we just winged it. I mean, I did Twitter
Yeah,
space
we
and
were just kind
it,
of throwing
yeah,
things against the wall.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and I did Twitter space, and
Yeah.
I look back and I say, well, like, oh, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Mhm.
Why? Because I was so passionate with people that I
Mhm.
thinking, yeah, like it was so interesting what they had to say. But then after a while, I became to realize, wait a minute, we need to now kind of condense it down, and that's what
Get it
we're
more
doing.
focused. Yeah.
Like more focused on the people's well-being and listening to
Mhm.
the direct conversations of a one-on-one or maybe a couple people, you know what I mean? But it was I had at one time I had over 300 people. Imagine that in a Twitter space,
Yeah.
everybody's talking all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a gong show. And not that some people said, well, you abandoned us. You abandoned. I go, no, no, no. I know it seemed that way.
You're still here. You're still here,
Yeah.
Brent.
I
So you
know.
didn't abandon anybody.
Yeah. And I know some people thought I abandoned them that way. No, like I didn't abandon it. I changed the way that we do the show
Mhm.
in a better way here. And yeah, I mean, I admit I look back in and say open mic session. Sure. I mean, that was great. It was fun. It was
It was
fun
great at the time. It was great at
at
the
the time.
time.
At the beginning, it was great.
Mhm.
It just became very obscured, shall we say? I guess a good way of wording it.
Mhm.
And nothing against nobody, because I know that some people had their different viewpoints on the different things that they're passionate they wanted to talk about so much, and
Mhm.
meanwhile the theme would be on something else, and then all of a sudden someone's so very passionate they wanted to gauge the conversation or somewhere else, and then
I
I go,
really like that. I really like that the podcast is way more focused now.
yeah, it's way better.
What I was going to say is we are at the end of the at the end of the hour.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do is I got some feedback from my friend Kent,
Hmm.
and he said that
Feedback's always
you know what we should do. He said that you should kind of do a different close at the end where you can say, "This is Brent Frayne signing out," and I can say, "This is Neil Matheson signing out," or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
Because he says it's important to introduce everybody at the beginning,
yeah.
and then also kind of do an outro at the end where you can kind of say, "This is Brent Frayne signing out."
That's
So
a yeah.
we'll try it.
Yeah, we're gonna yeah, definitely I'd love to integrate that in. And any other suggestions anybody has
Yeah,
so
because
great.
it is important. I realize because he's from a radio background, and he says
Yeah.
especially if you don't have the visual,
Yeah.
like if you're just going on
On
audio
audio.
only,
Yeah,
it's really important to introduce everybody at the beginning and then also do the outro at the end where you're saying, "This is Brent Frayne. I've been your host. Goodbye,"
yeah.
or whatever like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's a good point
yeah.
because I mean anyone listening to the audio then they can kind of follow along,
Hmm.
and another idea too for your friend Kent there, which I kind of had in my mind. I'm going to do my best to when I start the show. I'm also going to say and also I'm joined with my editor producer Neil Matheson. So that people
Yeah, basically,
know,
who's ever on the show, we
yeah,
should
so that when they're listening to
basically
audio
introduce
wise,
everybody on the show. Yeah,
because if you're listening audio wise, all of a sudden I start saying who the guest is, and then I don't say you, and then they hear your voice. Who's that?
yeah,
Most people now know,
yeah. No, for sure.
but if they're
But
now tuning in,
it does make a point. It does make a good point for audio. If it's only
yeah,
audio, or if, we're going to get more people tuning in, and
oh yeah,
maybe this is the first time. Maybe they're seeing this podcast for the very first time. And they're like, "Who are these guys?"
yeah.
Right? So,
The word of
yeah,
mouth is getting around the
yeah,
neighborhood. Like
yeah.
I've just talked to people just casually, and that's just how I am. I can just walk up to people. Some people I can't. I get the vibe. Okay, they don't want to talk about like my management. They
Mhm.
don't. Yeah. Well, no, I'm busy, Brent. Yeah, it's like okay, they don't
Yeah.
want to talk, right? But I can walk up to people and I'll talk about lived experience, and then I ask them if they're on YouTube, and they're like, oh yeah, and amazing enough, some people say, yeah, I tune into like a PWD Allies podcast.
Oh, and
And
you don't even mention it.
And
Oh,
I told him
wow.
because one person said, "You look familiar. Where do I know you from?" I said, and I say, I don't know. I've never met you before." And they're like, "Wait a minute, you do a podcast?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I do." Hey, wait a minute, that's you. That's you. And so yeah, like and I don't do it just to spite the government. I do it
Yeah.
to bring people together as information, as knowledge to as John Horgan would always tell me, you need to hold us accountable, Brent. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm your friend. He says, I classify you and Sonia and a lot of you around me as my friends. Okay. And you, as a privilege to actually have a premier, he says, how do you know how many premiers are going to say yeah, you're my friend? I go, not too many, I don't think. Right. I go, so I said, I take that as a privilege. He goes, right. But at the same time, I may be the premier and I make decisions that are sometimes very awkward to make. You need to hold me accountable. You need to hold our government accountable.
Yeah.
Don't be scared, he says, of throwing out nasty tweets of saying, how can you do this? And that. And then you got other people saying, oh, he says, because I read a tweet that you did one time and you're like, you're being nice. Like, and that's okay. But use the words, action words of how
Yeah.
you feel. And because you're going to get people saying, oh, well, he said, I read a tweet. Somebody had said, oh, he won't call out John because he's his friend. He
Yeah.
says, and then you lashed out. And I think, wow, okay, good on you, boy. Yeah. He said, that's
Well,
the way he said, he goes, great.
yeah, I mean, even my criticisms of David Eby,
Yes.
they're coming from a place of being well intended.
Yeah.
I don't just
Yeah.
criticize him for the sake of criticizing him. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm criticizing him because he kind of deserves it, but it's well intended criticism.
It's teaching
Yeah,
the government that you can do better and that you must do better and that you need to change these policies. These ancient policies, David, and any of the politicians watching this right now, or anyone watching or listening to the podcast, these policies are embedded in a long. I mean, I'm talking a long time ago. I mean, a long time ago. I mean, in some cases, I know. Our secretary would say, Brent, don't, no, don't go there. I mean, a lot of these policies are embedded like hundreds of
yeah,
years ago.
yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to go down that because that's all monarchy stuff. And you know what I mean? But what I can say is some like other policies, they can be changed. Like so many things can be changed for the better. And we're teaching the politicians and the general public who are not knowledgeable on how PWD are treated in our country, they're degraded with well below poverty level. And Jeff Leggett,
On purpose,
yeah,
on
on
purpose.
purpose. And
Yeah,
I'm so grateful to have certain people in my life like that are great advocates that way. That like Jeff Leggett, Tom Pogson. I mean, there's a lot of you that
hmm
and the list goes on. I mean, that are very
yeah.
good.
There's lots of people back east
Yeah,
too.
there's lots of people
Yeah.
back east, and you know who you are. I'm not going to
hmm
say all your names because
Yeah.
there's too many people to mention. You all have your own keen advocacy for different things that you're approaching on, different versions of basic income, GLBI, you name it, and you're very passionate, and that's awesome. Like that's really wonderful, and I think that we need to all collaborate somehow in our own way to come together and hold the government to account, saying, and don't be scared about posting onto social media saying, like, this is what you want to happen because you don't want to see this happen, right? Of saying X, Y, Z. And so you say to the government, like, you can't keep the status quo, keep going just to keep your stakeholders and all your other corporate investors happy.
hmm
Like, you got to change things. I mean, don't be scared of government. Don't be scared of all those other people. Like, you can actually go and change things. It's the general public, we all say you can change things and make things
Use
better.
Bill 7 to overwrite everything
Well, I mean, it can be though. I mean, even
for the
my
better, for the
I mean,
better.
I rent from a corporate landlord, and a lot of them are even saying, Like the government can change these things, Brent. It's not difficult. I go, well, then why aren't they? Like, why did they not give us a rate increase? Because it was actually a policy decision. It was a policy decision. Nothing else, nothing more. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it doesn't affect their lives until they live your life or live in the shoes of you and many millions of others across Canada, then they understand. But when they're well taken care of and they're, they're positioned, they're elected, and of course, when they're elected, they get that privilege of that entitlement, right? When they live in the bubble, and she said it doesn't affect their lives, right?
Yeah.
All the taxpayers' money,
Do you remember? Do you remember the Seinfeld episode Bubble Boy?
yes, Bubble Boy. I always remember that from The Big Short. Bubble Boy, he called it Bubble Boy.
Anyway, we got to punch out, Brent.
Yeah.
But
Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. At the beginning of the show, I usually give my intro of telling people or asking people to like, subscribe, comment in the comment section. I didn't do that today, so I will do that now. So if you would like to subscribe to the channel, that would be awesome. Definitely, mention in our comment section. There's the like button there, and yeah, you can.
well, there's a dollar bill. There's a dollar bill. The dollar bill is in chat right now.
Yep.
But then as soon as we go dark and it turns into a regular episode,
Yeah.
after about 24 hours, you'll see the dollar bill. It will show up at the bottom of the video. Once it starts to be just a regular video, you'll see the dollar bill as at the bottom, and you can just hit the dollar bill and just put a donation in.
Yeah.
As I always say, buy us a coffee or whatever you want to do, and
Yeah, it helps.
it helps us out. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does, and yeah, definitely it's greatly appreciated. I also appreciate everybody for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed our session about Bill 7. It's so many changes that can happen. Who knows, the unknown where that bill is going to go, but I think the opportunities there of changing things in the province to make things better. I think you can use that law to change things better. I think that you could maybe use that to your advantage. Let me know in your comment in the comment section. And I mean, if the BC Conservatives are you watching this right now, what do you think of that idea? Using that bill to the advantage of changing,
just fix everything.
Yeah, just fix it all up and make things better. Because I always say, when you give people more money, they can put more money back into the economy. If you don't give people more money, what happens? Not a good outcome. So thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in. I'm Brent Frayne. I'm the host, and I'm signing off for today. Stay tuned.
And I'm Neil Matheson, the editor-producer.
Yes. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
See ya. Bye.